Hello again, Irish fans, and welcome to the third edition of our new podcast, Run It Back. This week, we would like to take you back to November 28th, 1992. Band leader Paul Schaefer was celebrating his 43rd birthday on this day. Whitney Houston's song, I Will Always Love You, had just moved into the top spot on the Billboard Top 100 list. And President George H.W. Bush was preparing to leave the White House in January after losing the 1992 presidential election earlier in the month to Bill Clinton. Lou Holtz and his fifth-ranked Fighting Irish would take the field on this day in the Los Angeles Coliseum to face 19th-ranked USC for the 64th time. After losing at home to a talented and ranked Stanford team, the fifth-ranked Irish had won 5 straight games heading into the renewal of the USC rivalry, and they hoped to extend Notre Dame's winning streak over the Trojans to 10 straight games. The game was also important because the Irish were again in line to receive a major bowl bid. Notre Dame did make it 10 straight wins over the Trojans on this day, thanks in part to the efforts of our guest today, Irish All-American Reggie Brooks. Despite suffering from a serious case of the flu, my longtime broadcast partner and All-American running back rushed for a career-high 227 yards on 19 carries, including touchdown runs of 12, 55, and 44 yards as the Irish beat USC 31-23. We are looking forward to having Reggie join us today to talk about this game and some of the other iconic moments from his terrific senior season, along with some breaking news about his future. This edition of Run It Back starts right now.
This is our third episode of Run It Back. I am joined by Jack Nolan and Reggie Brooks. We're going to look at the 1992 USC game. Jack, I think before we even get into the game, I just want to talk to Reggie real quick. I know there's some big news about the new job you've taken, Reggie. Us at Notre Dame, we're obviously really sad to see you go, but I know the opportunity to go move on is a great one. I guess just update us on what your next steps are and what the opportunity is.
I'll be transitioning down to Texas. My wife actually originally took a job down there with the city of Fort Worth. And there was an opportunity that came about with Holtz's Heroes, formerly Lou's Lads Foundation, geared around guys that played for Coach Holtz, really driving his legacy home as well as the legacy of the players that played for him. So there was an executive director position that opened up, and the fortunate thing for me, it allows me to work from home, so I could do the job from anywhere. It is definitely going to be tough leaving Notre Dame. It's always had a special place in my heart, but this opportunity is one of those that, I wanted to be there to support my wife and her career goals, but also. It's a great opportunity to work with a lot of the guys that I have a great respect for and the former players that, former teammates and then the initiatives that we're looking to do are pretty impressive. Trying to find, developing a hardship fund for guys that play for Coach Holtz. It gives us an opportunity to rally around each other and be a support in times of need. I've been working with these guys as well as our other former student athletes for quite some time. And, you hear a lot of the hardships that come about. And that's one thing about Notre Dame former athletes. They support each other. And this is a great opportunity to kind of drive that home and really marry some things that I'm really passionate about. And that's the development of and promotion of our former student athletes, and also, the building of our community.
And I know you would not have left Notre Dame just for anything, but this is a big deal job for your wife, who you met at Notre Dame, who in fact was your tutor when you were an athlete. That's how you met. But she was the diversity and inclusion officer for the city of South Bend under Mayor Pete Buttigieg. And now she's the diversity and inclusion department chief and chief equity officer for the city of Fort Worth, Texas, where she can have a huge impact on the quality of life of all the people who live in Fort Worth. So you're following your wife where she is doing what they teach all Notre Dame graduates to do, and that's have a positive impact on society.
Exactly, and that's one of the key things with Lou's Holtz's Heroes. One of the focuses is we'll be working with the Envision Centers through the urban housing and urban development department to help build communities, strengthen those communities, particularly communities of colors that have been pretty hard hit from a poverty standpoint. And it also gives us an opportunity to really still engage guys around the country and develop those, help them develop within their communities. Because one of the things that I've been following here lately, Jerome Bettis is back in back in Michigan, helping kids, get technology, and especially in this day and age with COVID, a lot of kids don't have access to computers, don't have access to the internet. And he is doing a fundraiser, and I'm promoting that as well as other guys on the team. The things that we're doing and the things our former athletes are doing to bring light to that, but also let people know that, we're people too. And, we may have been a star here and there, but at the end of the day, we're part of a community. And to help build that community is what Notre Dame is all about. And that's what we're all about as far as Holtz's Heroes.
Well, I'm excited for you. I know the whole Notre Dame community is excited for you. You did an amazing job as an assistant AD here with our alumni relations. I think it's a great transition to start talking about this game, because I got to be honest, Reggie, I know you as someone that works at Notre Dame. I've been here for just 4 years as an employee, and I know you played football, and I know you were a big deal, but I'll be honest, before I watched this game, I hadn't watched a full game that you were in, start to finish. And I mean, Jack, I don't know about you, the guy just popped off the screen in this game, and we'll get to it when we break it down. But do you ever have to remind people, Reggie, like, hey, I'm Reggie Brooks. I had a pretty good Notre Dame career. I'm not just your colleague. I used to run up and down that football field.
No, because that's never been a big thing for me. It was a game, a game I enjoyed playing, loved to play. But it's more about those connections and relationships that you built, and that's what drives me, is the relationships that I was able to develop as a professional athlete, as a college athlete through high school. That kind of set the tone for me, because I've never been you would kind of not believe it. A lot of people wouldn't believe it, but I'm not an extrovert. I don't like a lot of fanfare and attention pointed at my direction. I prefer to, let others receive the accolades. I just wanted to be a part of the team and do my part to help us get better and be better, and have fun doing it. Because again, at the end of the day, it's a game. So I'm not big on reminding people who I am, because right now I'm Reggie Brooks, father of 5, and husband of Christina Brooks.
I've known Reggie, Tony, since he was a freshman on campus, and we've spent a lot of time together. But in preparing for this, it's never really dawned on me this way before. But when you look at the history of the Notre Dame football program, and I think it's fair to say there is no program in the history of college football that has a more storied history with more big name players and big moments than Notre Dame. But I don't think there's a player who has had more signature moments in a single season than Reggie Brooks. And it's not just this game we're going to focus on today. Maybe Joe Montana comes to mind. There may be some who approach it. But when you look at the whole story, I mean, I'll go down the list later, but I mean, he joined a team. Those Notre Dame teams wouldn't occur today because there's no way any top recruit's going to go to a team loaded with top recruits, with 4 and 5 guys ahead of him, all of whom are going to go to the NFL. So he had to wait. Started as a sophomore as a running back, pretty darn good defensive back, even though he hated every minute of it as a sophomore.
That was more about I had to suck weight I had to weigh in every day, and I came in weighing like 185, and I had to be 180, and it sucks watching everybody else eat and you can't eat because you have to try to maintain a weight.
Well, you were pretty good. 28 tackles. You picked off a pass. You had a pass breakup. You blocked a punt and recovered it in the end zone, 26-yard touchdown. But I know that was hard to the point where you wondered if you were going to make it through the 4 years.
Oh, yeah. After my sophomore year, when I made the decision to go back to running back, Coach wasn't necessarily too pleased with that decision because he felt I could better serve the team as a defensive back. But I was pretty much locked in that I wanted to switch. And, like I said, I was way down on the depth chart. And I was just like, maybe I should, reconsider this. But I know when I made the call home, because I'd kind of had everything lined up for me to go back to Oklahoma, go to Oklahoma State. And my dad said, you made that commitment, you're going to honor it. And he literally just hung up on me and I had to figure it out.
But here's what you got into. As a freshman, here's the 100-yard rushers in 1989. Folks, you may have heard of a few of them. Ricky Waters, Anthony Johnson, Rocket Ismail, Rodney Culver, Dorsey Levens, who went on to a lengthy NFL career and ended up having to transfer from Notre Dame just to get the amount of carries he wanted. Then he decided to come back in 91, and the 100-yard rushers that year were Jerome Bettis, your brother, Tony Brooks, Rodney Culver. You had 122 rushing yards that year. Willie Clark had 114. And so it's not to your senior year when you take off with 1,343, one of the best single seasons in Notre Dame history. It wasn't just that. And you and I are almost a vaudeville act. We've done a lot of speaking engagements. There are 3 moments. And the first one, of course, is your favorite topic, the unconscious touchdown against Michigan.
Oh.
So just Tony, it'll be easy for Tony to find this. Tony,
oh
folks,
yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it.
Watch the video version. Tony puts this together and does a great job.
Okay.
Take us through that touchdown. I'm not going to read it.
Made the play. Here's the option. Brooks on the pitch.
When you getting knocked out is not cool.
Yeah.
It's not. It's just not. There's nothing cool about getting knocked out.
But you not only you get knocked out, you not only didn't fumble, you're unconscious, and you switched the ball to protect it from one hand to the other, and you're unconscious.
That was definitely something that was drilled into me early on by my father, who was my first coach, and every coach after. I always move the ball to the outside arm away from the defender. So I still, until I watched it, I was like, oh, okay. Something sinks in. I'm coachable. At the very least, I am coachable.
Well, take us through the play that you remember from watching it the next day, since you didn't remember it after the game.
No, it was an option play. We're option team, and one thing I like to say is I don't think Rick Meyer gets the credit as an athlete that he was. He was running the option. I don't think that was the best offense for him. I think he was a much better drop back quarterback, pocket passer. But that was that was our team. I mean, but it's also the kind of person that Rick is that he's willing to, I won't say sacrifice himself, but saying, hey, this is about the team. And that was kind of the overarching mindset of the teams I was on. It's like, it's not about me, it's about the teams. And that's what was drilled into us through Coach Holtz. So we were 1st and 20 at the 20-yard line. It was an option play. And I knew going in again that, you're always, as a running back, you got to make one guy miss. And, Rick did a good job of pressing the edge, good pitch, caught it. And I saw Corn Brown coming down the alley because we weren't able to get a guy up on him. And, it was like, okay, I have to make one guy miss. I was able to spin off of him, got my hand down. We actually practiced that drill where you get your hand on the ground to maintain your balance. Was able to somewhat maintain my balance, got hit a couple more times, and then defense, I think cornerback from the opposite side comes over and just drills me right in the base of the helmet, and then it was just lights out. And I will say this, had I been a couple of yards away, that could have turned out even worse, though.
That's true.
Lucky. It was lucky I got hit just inside the 5-yard line and stumbled in, because if it was outside the 5-yard line, it would have been probably a fumble or, I just didn't make it to the end zone. So, timing is everything.
Yeah.
But it was considered so big, not just among Notre Dame fans, that one organization named it the play of the year. You have an oil painting of it in your office as play of the year. Some athletes could live off that one play for the rest of their lives, but not you. Then you have the snowball.
I was going to say the Penn State catch somehow not being the play of the year. I mean, that might be even better, Reggie. Talk us through that catch.
Meyer. Yes! Brooks!
And one of the backstories that most people don't know, if they haven't heard one of your and my talks, is that many were surprised, and Lou Holtz was shocked that you caught the football. Explain to us why Lou Holtz was so surprised that his star running back caught a pass in the end zone to win a game.
Okay, I wore glasses, but and I actually tried the whole goggle thing in high school.
You had contacts.
It worked. It was, you get the fogginess, so I had to go to contacts. I hated contacts because they irritated my eyes. So only time I wore my contacts was in the game. I would not wear them in practice. And so in practice, I couldn't catch anything. I mean, because I was nearsighted, so everything far away was just a blur. And a lot of times the ball would get up on me so quick, but I wasn't prepared for it. But when I got in the game, I could see just fine because I had my contacts in, so everything was fine. But I never told anybody I didn't wear my contacts in the practice because I didn't think it was a relevant point until, I got in the game and Coach Holtz said what he said after the game. And I'm like, what? Then I thought about it. I was like, oh, yeah, maybe I should wear them in practice, huh? So it was just the fact that, and that's one of the things I'm trying to be better at is communicating. That's not always enough. I just kind of sit back and just let things happen versus being a little more forthcoming. And it was really that simple. Had I just, worn my contacts in practice, it would have made a world of difference.
So the Penn State game is a great game. I watched it, actually, most of it during one of those watch parties a couple weeks ago. It's online. It's on the YouTube channel. The catch you made, I think, was it 4th down, guys? I think it was
2-point conversion.
2-point.
Sorry, that's right. You're right. It was a 2-point to win the game. That's right.
Every game we practice a 2-point conversion.
That's right.
And we actually used the 2-point conversion play that we practiced for the prior play that Jerome scored the touchdown on. And then we kind of like a makeshift play from Coach Holtz for the 2-point conversion because we had used our 2-point conversion the play before.
That's right. I thought it was 4th down because it was do or die. It's either going to win the game or lose the game on that play. It's an amazing catch. And that game was 2 weeks prior to this USC game we're going to look at. So if I recall, there was a bye week in between, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys –
we always played USC, our California team during Thanksgiving.
Everything I read, there was a great New York Times article about this game. And Jack, I'd love to hear your insight as well after I get it from Reggie. But You guys are 8-1-1 going into this game, and all I'm hearing about is that you, along with a good portion of the team, are sick as can be going into this USC game. Just what were you feeling like, and what was the condition of the team as you got ready to play, one of your marquee games of the year?
Well, and I think it had something to do with the pregame meal. Because we were fine the day before. We would always go out to SC a little early, and we would have Thanksgiving dinner out there at the hotel. And that was another thing that I was to remember is the fact that parents of the guys that played in California, from California, their moms and families would come and bring food to the hotel, and we'd have a Thanksgiving dinner at the hotel, which was always really nice. But it was just the basic day of pregame. We go through our meetings, pregame meal, and it was like really just shortly after pregame meal, we go back to your room, you get dressed, because we always wore coat and tie to every game, before every game, and was on the bus on the ride over, and just it accelerated rapidly, because early on it was just feeling a little queasy, and thought it was kind of nerves, but it progressed quickly to where it was like feeling like you're gonna throw up, vomiting, and the two main individuals that it impacted that was a concern was myself and Craig Hendrick. And Craig Hendrick was the do-all kicker for us. I mean, he did punts, he did kickoffs, he did PATs, field goals. So he was, dare you say it, a little more important. And again, I can't deny it because this is being recorded. So you may have to take this part out.
Sure.
But I would say, as it relates to value to the team, Craig was probably, in my mind, more valuable than I was. I will deny this to the day I die.
That's very modest of you, Reggie.
Excuse me.
No offense to our kickers out there.
Reggie Brooks is saying that a kicker is more valuable than
You're
a
being
running
very
back.
modest. You're being a good
Kickers who
teammate.
for years you've been all over me, aren't part of the team, shouldn't get a award.
At that particular time, it does not count for today. It was just at that time.
You had to wait till you were leaving town to admit this.
It was for that game.
Oh,
Tony,
man.
for 15 years, he's been all over me on the
Zach,
air.
you got to put it in the
not even
context.
mentioning kickers.
You have to put it in the context. I've always said Henny was more than a kicker, because he was a heck of an athlete.
Yeah.
But in terms of value, we had really no one else to do what he did. So I will admit that, but it was just for that game and for him. It does not carry over to other kickers. It just doesn't.
So Jack, let me ask you.
Reggie Ho has no value, even though he's the one that the difference points against Michigan in the '88 title year, because you had nobody else on that team to do that either.
He really wasn't a football player. Henny was a football player. There's a difference. I'm going to stick.
Reggie Ho would take that now because he's a doctor now, so he's.
Jack, let me ask you, what were you doing for this specific game, 92, when they're at USC? I know you're covering the team. In what capacity and where were you for this game?
At that time, I was hosting pre- and post-game radio and anchoring local sportscast. I didn't travel often at that time. I traveled throughout the 80s up till 1990 because I used to do the games on WNDU. Notre Dame was the only school in the country that had every game televised. We even did the games ESPN did. At that time, I was doing pre and post game, pregame shows at home, those kinds of things. Like the next year, 93, we did a 6-hour pregame show on WNBU before the Florida State game. But that's what I was doing. So I was closely watching. I wasn't necessarily with them. So I didn't realize until the broadcast when Keith Jackson and Bob Greasy were talking about it, how sick they were. And I had the same reaction I did watching the game. Every time they had a tight shot of Reggie's face, I'm like, you don't look all that sick to me. And maybe there's something about scoring against USC that cures all ills.
It was, I got to say, we watched the 95 game, Jack, and you alluded to a little bit here. Well, watching this one, it was great to hear Keith Jackson's voice again as a broadcaster and football fan. I see Reggie nodding. I mean, that's the iconic voice of college football.
He seems to be in pretty good fettle on a field that has been painted a fine emerald green. So here we go. Notre Dame kicking off to Southern California.
91,000 people apparently in the Coliseum. When you're there, and I guess you're a little bit under the weather, Reggie, but anytime you play USC, you're in that environment. When you think back to that game and you think back to how anticipated that game is, what goes through your head? What is it like to be in an environment like that when you know the whole country's watching and there's 90,000+ people there?
Well, it was more about just, we didn't like USC. That's just a rivalry to unrivaled. So anytime you have an opportunity to beat SC, and anytime SC loses, even if it's going to benefit us, I'd rather they lose. Even if a win benefits us, I'd rather they lose. I'd be okay with that. It's just that intense of a rivalry. But more so for me, it was just that was going to be my last regular season game to represent Notre Dame. And early on, like I said, I didn't even go through pregame warmups because I just wasn't feeling well. And I mean, it got to the point where Coach Holtz was asking, "Are you going to be able to go?" So I didn't go out and participate in pregame warmups. I was just, they were trying to give me all kind of fluids and electrolytes to try to, but I couldn't keep anything down. I mean, it was just anything I would take, it would just come right up, and that just made it that much more difficult. And I didn't think for a minute, I was like, can I do this? Mm-hmm. But when Coach asked me point blank, I'm like, I'm playing, Coach. There's no way I'm not going to participate. And, like I said, you guys got to carry me off because this is my last game against a heated rivalry, a heated rival. And it's also, my senior year. And again, you want to go out on a high note. And that was the thing that was the most important thing for me, was to go out on a high note and have the opportunity to have this one last game with teammates and friends.
So Jack, as we get ready to go through some of the big plays here, why don't you help put this game into context a little bit? Because again, they were 8-1-1. There's a bowl bid on the line. There's a long winning streak against USC. I think this could have been the 10th straight win. When you think back to what was at stake for this game, Jack, what comes to mind as you were kind of getting ready to watch this final game of the regular season?
Well, as always, but even more so at this time, this was the tail end of one of the great runs of success in Notre Dame football history, with teams that were enormously talented. They had, of course, won the '88 national championship, probably should have won maybe a couple of more under Coach Holtz. The expectations were super, super high. This had been a season where in the unconscious touchdown game, that ended up being a tie. So no one was pleased with that. And then Bill Walsh had returned to Stanford. And I think now in hindsight, people know how talented that Stanford team was. It's considered maybe more talented now. Now it's considered one of the most talented Stanford teams of all time. But at that time, losing at home to Stanford was a very tough thing, not only for the players to swallow, but for the fan base to swallow. So Notre Dame fans demand nothing but perfection, and anything less is not good. So now you're on the road against USC. In all likelihood, I know I said in the open that a bowl bid was on the line, major bowl bid. They probably would have gone to a major bowl, either the Orange or the Cotton, regardless of the outcome, as long as it wasn't a USC blowout. But you want to cement that. But even more so, losing to USC, Reggie and all of the players I've worked with made it very clear, that's not acceptable. If Notre Dame goes into that game 0-10, it's not acceptable. You've got to win that game. So, and I think this was a team that knew it was very talented, and they wanted any season that ends. Even a bowl victory doesn't necessarily wipe away the sour taste. Reggie, please jump in here if I'm wrong, of losing to USC. And they hadn't lost again. Reggie never lost to USC.
And I lord that over guys that I know from USC to this day. They can talk about the success they had, but in this game was for the 10th straight victory over USC, and that is something you don't want to let go of. It's even more important than having that long streak against Navy and never losing to Navy. That this was more important. Anytime you can beat USC, that trumps everything.
And this game had a great irony to it in that USC has always been known for student body left, student body right. Well, this USC team was a throwing team. I mean, Curtis Conway was the real star. Rob Johnson, a great quarterback.
Yeah.
Best quarterback on the field was probably Rick Meyer, and trust me, this in no way is a shot at Lou Holtz, who's a great coach, but this is the year after an interview, he walked away from me and turned around, and I did my poor impersonation before. I won't do it again, to turn around and look at me and just said, Jack, I don't like throwing the football. When you throw the football, 3 things can happen, and 2 of them are bad. And after that USC game, they really went back to ground and pound. Notre Dame's offensive line was bigger. They had more talent at running back. Now, they still had great receivers and a great quarterback, but this was a Notre Dame team that wanted to ram it down your throat, which for years was USC's mode of operation. And that's what they went out and did in this game. They never jumped way out in front, but even when USC was leading early in the game, and USC had an outstanding offense, but the defense was holding USC to field goals and not touchdowns. They got 1 in the first half. You never felt as a Notre Dame fan in this game that the Irish weren't going to win the game. And when they took the lead, even though I don't think it ever got bigger than 8 points, you never felt that USC was going to come back and win the game because of the way they dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides. 6 sacks, I think, in this game by the defense, all in the second half. Notre Dame was the much more physical team on both sides of the ball in this game.
Yeah, I was looking at the box score, and we can go through it now. I mean, you guys ran the ball 45 times compared to throwing it 14 times. USC came out, and Jack alluded to it. Rob Johnson, the offense, they got a quick field goal, and you guys took over on your opening drive. And I just, again, this is the first time I've really watched one of these games start to finish, Reggie. And you and Jerome, I mean, you just pop off the screen. I mean, the first carry I saw from you, I literally jumped back a little bit because I was just stunned with how hard you guys run.
And it is Brooks getting the first ball. And he bangs into and almost ran over Jason Seymour. Myra gives it to the other end. He's got a first down for Notre Dame at the Southern California 39-yard line.
When you think back, I don't know if you can think back to that opening drive, but when you got the ball the first couple times, especially because you're under the weather a little bit, and this ended up being one of your career games. Did it feel any different? Did you have a different feel when you got those first few carries and you felt, okay, I can do it?
The first carry is always big for me. Is like I said, it kind of gives you an idea of what the game is going to be like, that first hit. I always enjoy getting that first bit of contact because that kind of sets the tone and your mindset for what type of game it's going to be. And, and USC had some, Jason Sehorn, Willie McGinnis, they had some talent on that defensive side of the ball, and we knew it wasn't going to be easy. But we also knew, we were good at imposing our will on other teams, to physically dominate someone. And that's the one thing I always remember about the teams I played for. The games when we lose, we may lose, but we've never been physically dominated. And that's something that's a mindset that you can impose your will on someone else. And that was the thing about, we felt they played California ball, which is, to me, kind of something.
Always they brought that up. Always.
I always viewed California ball as a little soft.
Well, I mean, there was a game I think it was early 60s where they did play, I think it was the 60s, might have been the 50s. Notre Dame and USC played in South Bend last game of the season, and the temperatures were right about freezing, and the USC folks said, oh, no. We are never doing that again. And throughout my years here, 38 years now, even though you want good weather in October, Notre Dame fans are praying to the snow gods and Mother Nature to make it rainy and cold on USC game, because I can recount, and I won't fill up this podcast with it, but game after game, there was one game where USC had a great first half in South Bend, and then a front came through. and the wind shifted and it got cold and it rained and USC ran out in the second half and all the guys start jumping around and they're holding their shoulders and they send the trainers in to get the big coats and stuff, and Notre Dame just destroyed them in the second half. They don't like cold weather, and Notre Dame's players have always thought that they were the physically tougher team since I've been here whenever they played USC.
So on the opening drive, you guys drove down. There was not a single pass on the opening drive. I watched it all the way through, and it was a lot of you and Jerome. You pounded it in from 12 yards to get the opening score. And then, like you guys alluded to, it was, the first one we did with Ron was a 38-10 kind of drubbing of USC. This was a really fun game, I thought, because it was more back and forth. USC would get the ball back, and they'd retake the lead. They went up 10-7. As you said, the MVP of the team, Henrich, had a field goal there that tied the game at 10-10. And then USC had a 13-10 lead about midway of this, or late in the second quarter. And I thought this was the drive that really got you guys back in. It got you guys back in front and in front for good. But it all culminates in that huge 55-yard touchdown run, Reggie. And I'd love you just to talk us through that one, because that's the one where I watched and just thought, okay, this is a guy that's not only the best player on the field, but he's now starting to approach one of the best games of his career once he ripped off that 55-yarder.
Well, a lot of it, so we played a lot of downhill, even it was a pitch. But if you watch, like I said, our pitches, we were doing drop step and coming downhill and attacking the line of scrimmage. That's what our offense is about: base blocking, coming off the ball, creating a new line of scrimmage, and it pops so quick. So, normally if you're pitching, like Jack was talking about, student body left, student body right, you're pitching and swinging out. On this play, it was a pitch and downhill coming at the defense. And our guys came off the ball, and that was, like I said, I always had a good first step, and it was a good explosiveness. So hitting the hole and getting through the hole, and then it was just a matter of outrunning the secondary, and fortunately was able to split some defenders. But it all started at the point of attack and the line of scrimmage. Our guys got off the ball, made some great blocks. Irv Smith, Justin Hall and Aaron Taylor were on that left side. So it was off the left side, and they just did a great job of getting that first contact. And when I got through the hole, I was on the linebacker so quick, they weren't ready for it. And that's the one thing, because they're used to, if you're pitching, the linebacker usually scrapes across. Well, if you're scraping as a linebacker on that play, I'm by you before you know it. I'm up on you before you know it. And you don't have a awareness, because when you're pitching, and our pitch was a dead pitch where Rick just turned and laid it out, but I'm coming toward the line of scrimmage as opposed to running sideways, and it popped so fast, and it was like the first thing I knew, I'm in the secondary running downhill, and it was that was the thing where I said, if I'm gonna get the ball downfield, I don't like the linemen. I want them coming to running downfield for the PAT, not another play.
Brooks is the tailback. Reggie has it. Has some room. Look out. Touchdown. No
flag. Jack, when you watch that run too, Reggie was running away from the Trojans. It was unbelievable.
Just explode. What was your 40 time? What's the fastest 40 time you recorded?
Mid 4.3.
Oh,
we had some. People don't give us a lot of credit. Even Jerome. As big as a guy Jerome was, he had such great feet, and he was so nimble for his size his ability to run between the tackles. So when he dropped back to tailback, and he had another 3 yards to see what was going on. And when he's coming down with a load of steam, watch out, because there's a reason they call that man the bus.
I honestly think when people today look back at highlight films of you guys, one of the reasons they don't think you're fast as you are is those shoulder pads. were huge.
Yeah, they were.
I mean, you look like robots running down there, or SpongeBob
Transformers,
SquarePants
yeah.
running down the field. It just wasn't sleek. How did those pads feel?
They were fine. I mean, it was actually looked worse on the defensive backs because, defensive backs, they're not the biggest guys. But, yeah, the pads were huge back then. I mean, I look now and, I mean, they don't even have pads anymore. So they did kind of – I just imagine what if we had smaller pads, how much quicker we would have been.
Yeah. I mean, they were huge. Speaking of smaller, a thing that jumped out at me, that neither the USC offensive line or the Notre Dame offensive line had a 300-pound lineman.
Yeah.
Neither side. And Notre Dame's were actually bigger. What a great line. Your left tackle was Lindsey Knapp, 271. Left guard was Aaron Taylor, 294. Tim Ruddy, and I forgot to write down his weight, but I think he was 255, 265, somewhere in there.
He was right around – he was close to 270.
Okay, they listed him as like 260. 270. They listed him lower officially.
Yeah.
Todd Norman was 289 at the right guard. Right tackle was Justin Hall, 297. But, I mean, again, today, every one of those guys would have been considered, other than Taylor and Hall, they would have been considered light, and everybody else would have been considered too small. How has the game changed that way? Do you think the bigger linemen are more effective? Had they had to evolve because everybody's gotten bigger? Or were linemen at that weight more agile, more quick?
Well, ours is just the explosiveness. I mean, that was kind of the focus of our offensive line, was getting off the ball and quickness and explosiveness to get off the ball, get into a defender, and get hands in there. And it's all about leverage. When you are able to get underneath a defender, it doesn't really matter your size. If you can get underneath someone else, you're going to have leverage. So size wasn't the determining factor in the success of our offensive line. It was the fact that we just played with such great leverage. And that wasn't just the linemen. I mean, our tight ends, we had some great ones. Derek Brown, Irv Smith, Oscar McBride. We had Pete Cleveridge. We had some guys that did a great job of getting leverage. This is back in the day of the fullback. So we had fullbacks that had to come off and ISO block.
Yeah.
I don't think that even exists anymore.
No, that's not in the playbook anywhere.
Well, there's no fullback.
Yeah. So, but that was the thing. I'm saying, to me, football is always about leverage, and who can get better leverage is who's going to win the line of scrimmage.
But this brings us to a question. I know many fans, and I get it all the time. You've heard it. They're saying right now, I wish Notre Dame played that style of football today. And that style of football just isn't played. Could you put together a team today to play that kind of football? First of all, kids don't want to play that kind of football. They want everything to be spread and the deep passes and the speedy backs and not the ground and pound. Is that possible anymore?
San Francisco 49ers. It is possible.
Yeah. All right.
You look at how they play the game. Again, the passing is there. Said the ability to play action pass, but you can still win the line of scrimmage and run the football. But it starts with the offensive line and their ability to get leverage against the defense. So it's possible. Now, will it ever go back to I formation, option? No. But you can play a physical, aggressive brand of football at every level today, even at the shotgun. Again, I was talking about the pitch that I'm coming downhill. As long as you have offensive linemen that can get off the ball and get into defenders, you're never going to hit because everybody wants those big plays. But those big plays come from being fundamental and doing those little things the right way. And one of the things, like I said, from an offensive line standpoint, you got to maintain the double team. And I don't think that's preached enough in terms of blocking, because a back can handle a linebacker because you're looking for that. But now everybody is kind of spread out and you're just kind of one-on-one blocking. So you don't get – or their zone blocking is the big thing now. But that one-on-one drive blocking, double teams, pressing the hole, it's not as sexy as what you have today. And I think you can do it because, again, you look at San Francisco's offense, it's not glamorous, it's not sexy, but it got them to the Super Bowl. And they were effective. Yeah. So the fact that, I will not say that you can't do it. It's just, like you said, young people today, they want the glitz and glamour, the spit and shine. That's the game. But I don't think that still comes back to blocking and tackling. That's football. That basic fundamentals will never change. You just need to learn them.
So, Tony, before we move to the third quarter, I don't want to interrupt, but it wouldn't be a Reggie Jack broadcast if I didn't make Reggie talk about a play he didn't want to talk about.
Okay.
But it's a complimentary play for Reggie, but it started early in the second quarter. Rick pitched the ball to you a wee bit late, and a guy named Willie McGinnis was already in your personal space, and he blew you up.
Bettis is back in, so is Brooks. That's the way down the line. Goes Brooks, and McGinnis eats him up.
How'd you hold on to that ball?
I was pretty pissed. It wasn't. He didn't pitch it late. He pitched it way too soon because all Willie did was fake at Rick and then made a beeline for me. He just looked at Rick, kind of jumped, and then and I'm like, oh, and that's the one I saw coming. I said, I can handle the hits that you're gonna see coming, and it was just like my whole focus was just hold on to the football.
Oh man,
this is gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt, and that was the one play where I was like, Rick, I thought we were boys. I thought we were friends.
But here's your respect, because you talked about Rick not wanting to get hit, but these are numbers that also jumped out of my research. He was the starting quarterback for 3 years. Tony Rice was still there his freshman year. His sophomore year, he ran the ball 98 times. So you talk about wanting to run the ball. He had a quarterback that was eating stuff up because Lou wanted to run the option. His junior year, he ran the ball 75 times. And your year, because in part you and Jerome were doing so well, he still ran it 68 times, and he wasn't the fastest guy. He wasn't slow, but he had taken his share of hits as well.
Oh yeah, no, and that's what I said earlier in when we were talking about. I don't think he gets the credit as being as athletic as he was. No, he wasn't the fastest, but he was a heck of a runner. A lot better runner than he gets credit for. And his toughness is, because again, you got to understand, not only is he taking shots running when he's running, and he dishes it out too. I mean, if you watch that Penn State game, he'll drop a shoulder on you in a minute, and won't flinch at all. But it's the fact that he also, like I said, drop back the pass. He takes hits. He may throw the ball, but back then, you could hit. You didn't have the protection that the quarterbacks didn't have the protection that they do now. So he took some shots every time he ran the ball, but also when he dropped back to throw. So his toughness, I just give him crap because I can. I still go back to the Navy game when he pitches the ball late, and I was like, you could have got the touchdown on that, Rick. That was your touchdown. Literally, he pitched it to me. We were on the 1 yard line. And I wasn't expecting it. I just reached up and grabbed it. It was like, whoa. But
now, come on. We want to stay in good graces because he makes really good wine now. And I'm still waiting for my free case.
I'm expecting, you guys are going to do a good enough,
really good wine.
Do a good enough job on this podcast. Maybe I'll get a shipment from Rick at the end of this.
I will go to bat for Rick any day, any time when it comes to toughness because I've seen him take some shots just dropping back. That's what I said. I can't give a lot of the quarterbacks to this day a lot of credit because, you can't touch the quarterback anymore. We're almost playing touch football these days.
Hopefully we get Rick on one of these, but not. He grew up in Goshen in northern Indiana, grew up a Notre Dame fan, came here and stuck it out because the offense and Bob Greasy. Did you rewatch the game, Reggie? Did you have time to do that? Okay. I mean, Bob made it clear almost to the point of going over the top of it, but it wasn't an offense that showcased Rick's abilities, and his long NFL career is testimony to how good a quarterback he was. There were so many other programs where he would have been. You finished fifth in the Heisman Trophy voting that year. Had he been in a program where he got to throw it 25 or 30 times, he could have been in the top 5, but he stuck it out because team was more important to him than the individual numbers.
Exactly. That is what our teams were about, the games we played, because Rick and I, we came in together, and again, that's always going to be my quarterback, playing hands down, and his ability to lead is still unmatched in my book.
So after the big run, it was 17-13, and then with a minute left, there's actually like a couple seconds left, a muff punt that led to USC picking up a late field goal right at the end of the half. So it's 17-16 when you guys went into halftime, Reggie. And I would just like to know what you can remember from being in the locker room at halftime. Jack Arute had a report that you were throwing up in the locker room at halftime.
Keith, that touchdown run by Reggie Brooks is even more impressive when you hear what the doctor just told me moments before he made the run. It seems that the flu, that stomach virus, has affected him the worst this evening. The doctor told me he was in the bathroom all during the halftime vomiting, and he says he's playing out there right now on sheer determination and will.
I guess you can confirm or deny that. And then just what was the mood like in a 1-point game against USC after the first half, getting ready for the second?
Well, for me, I didn't get to, because normally at halftime we go through adjustments and preparation for what we need to do in the corrections. I was not a part of any of that. I was in the bathroom the whole time. And, literally the entire halftime, I was thrown up. So when I came out to go back out, I had to ask, so what adjustments were we making? Because I mean, literally, I couldn't keep anything down, and it was just like, I was just to the point. It was like, just point me in the right direction. What was so weird about that game is that, I couldn't, like, when I was on the sideline, I felt like crap. But anytime after the play was called, it just seemed like it was kind of an out of body experience of just go and perform, but I could not feel I didn't feel like I was there. I didn't feel like I was present in my body during the plays. But, halftime, like I said, I got some direction, but it was just one of those deals where, again, you're just kind of running on instinct more than anything else. So I said, they kind of gave me the mini corrections from halftime of what we're going to look to do. And again, we weren't going to do a lot of different things because offensively, we were having success moving the ball, and we were, again, imposing our will. We were being physical. The biggest thing was just make sure you don't, take care of the football. Don't put it on the ground, and, don't give them the opportunity.
So we head to the third quarter, and a couple of drives stall out for both you guys. Again, Willie McGinnis was the guy for USC that jumped off the page. Obviously had a great NFL career, but he was blowing up plays in the backfield. You mentioned, too, how quarterbacks don't get hit these days. I have a note here that Rob Johnson got hit about 2 steps out of bounds. That would absolutely be a late hit today that wasn't flagged.
A targeting and an ejection today.
Yeah. You'd have no chance staying in the game. But you guys got the ball back, I want to say, about 9 minutes left in the third at your own 35. And it was just another one of those drives that I have earmarked here where, again, the running game was so impressive. But there was a point where it was, I think, 3rd and 2, and maybe you guys got stopped short, and it was like 4th and a foot on this drive, and you had to pick up about, maybe half a yard. I remember the camera caught Coach Holtz running the play in with you, and you guys picked it up on I think it was a Meyer sneak to get the first down to keep the drive alive, and it led to the big 44-yard touchdown run from you. Just when you were watching that drive back, what stuck out to you? And then specifically on that last run, what was able to enable you to get into the end zone?
Well, they made some adjustments and trying to stop us in clogging up the middle, and really and then just using their speed on the outside and the edges. But they made a concerted effort to really kind of stack the line and say, hey, we're going to really gang up on them in the run game. And, but even then we're saying, and that was the thing about our offensive line, felt they could block anybody at any time, and if they needed to block 3 people, they would. And that's every guy on the line of scrimmage that was just our mentality. But we knew, we're going to have to, get to the outside a little bit and switch it up because they made some adjustments. So we made an adjustment to kind of get to the edge a little bit. But on that 44-yard run, the one thing that, you tend to kind of forget about is the receivers blocking downfield.
And Brooks in behind the line of scrimmage, shakes it off. Got one man, touchdown, Notre Dame.
You can take care of things at the point of attack, but the long runs come from your receivers downfield blocking, and our receivers dominated people. I mean, like we called Lake Dawson Bam Bam. I mean, this guy was so freaking strong. And I would see him take safeties and just manhandle. And so it's tough for a defensive back if they're getting blocked, like legitimately getting drilled and trying to get off a block to make a play on someone like myself or Jerome or any of the backs that were running, that we had running. So it was one of those deals where, again, I just knew if I got past the line of scrimmage, I was going to be in a position to pick up some good yards. And that was kind of the broader point of our runs. You see the runs in fourth quarter when Jerome kind of took over. The runs were predicated off the longer runs were predicated off our receivers downfield just manhandling their defensive backs.
Now, Reggie, is this the first time you've rewatched this game?
Yes.
So I want to ask you this, and I know we make a lot of Notre Dame games available online on our various social platforms. This was an ABC broadcast, so we don't own the rights, so we can't make the whole game available. But I wrote down some quotes from the announcers, and I say this in part so folks who may not have been familiar with your career know how you were regarded nationally. Opening of the game, Keith Jackson setting up Reggie Brooks. He has the flu, but this season he has been spectacular. Then we go to the third quarter. Bob Greasy opens with going, "This has been the Reggie Brooks show." And then after your last touchdown, Bob Greasy said, "Why throw the ball?" And this is a former NFL Hall of Fame quarterback, Super Bowl champion. "Why throw the ball when you've got Reggie Brooks?"
Why throw the ball when you've got Reggie Brooks?
I know you're a self-confident, humble guy who came up in the era where the team was more important, and you just, like, they followed you off the field after your touchdowns, and that helmet stayed on. You straightened it once. I thought, oh, he's going to take it off here. You did not take off your helmet because it was part of the culture in Lou Holtz's culture. You leave your helmet on because it's not about you. So when you heard the announcers, I assume for the first time, heap that kind of a praise on you, and they were the top two college football announcers in the country at that time. I just really do want to know what went through your mind. Was it embarrassment? Was it's nice that people thought of you that way on the national scene? Was it humbling? What was it?
It was somewhat humbling. But I give a lot of that credit to Chris Collinsworth, who was announcing our games. I mean, he really, in my mind, put me on the map in terms of awareness of the things that I was doing while playing for that particular year. But it's one of those deals where I know for a fact that it was great. I had great success. It was a great year, but those runs, those opportunities don't happen without the guys up front, the Aaron Taylors, the Tim Ruddys, the Justin Hall, the Jordy Halters, the Lindsey Knapps, the Irv Smiths. And then, our receivers, Adrian Jarrell, Lake Dawson, Clint Johnson. We had Will Pollard. We had guys that Ray Grigg, these guys, I don't do that without them. Or Jerome Bettis in front of me. And, a lot of people don't know Jerome had a really bad shoulder, like ligament damage. And, for him to go out and he was the star of the show. I mean, going into that season.
Well, he had an ankle too, didn't he? He had a bad ankle that season too?
Well, Jerome his shoulder was messed up for a good part of his time at Notre Dame from his freshman year. But the toughness. So it's like, how can I not bring my very best every week because the guys I'm playing with are doing that and then some? You know, Rick Meyer gets up, gets his butt handed to him. And sometimes if I miss the block, it's on me. Never got up and complained. You know, you get quarterbacks that if they get knocked down, they get hit, they want to gripe and complain and chew out their teammates. Rick never did that. Not once. You know, Jerome never complained about how many carries I was getting versus how many he was getting. You know, and again, he said we didn't throw the ball a lot. But Lake Dawson didn't gripe about not being thrown the ball. You know, these are the things that make the teams I played for so special. That no matter what, we're here for each other. We're here for each other every day. And it's not just, at the game, it's in practice. This is how we practice. So when we get to the game, that was fun. I mean, people talk about Lou Holtz and everybody thinks about Dr. Lou. Lou was vicious. That little man scared the crap out of a lot of big people because he was so intense. But it made you better. And you were so geared toward trying to trigger it, as they would call it now, dealing with, his tyranny, that you had to support each other because we had to protect each other from that man.
Yeah, no one else.
Yeah, exactly. We're all we got.
So I love that Jack pointed out that quote because I have it written down as well. Why throw the ball when you have Reggie Brooks? I think it spoke, like you said, the team was in on it, but it just spoke to the amazing game that this was for you, Reggie. I'm looking at my notes here. 227 is the yardage you racked up in this game. I believe it's still, and Jack may have a better number on this, I think it's still the fourth most rushing yards by an individual in a game. I'm also looking here as I'm moving along in the third quarter. USC made it 24-23, the touchdown of their own. And so we went to the fourth, and I've got my notes as you guys kind of exchange punts back and forth at the start of the fourth quarter. Reggie runs for 30 yards, but a holding call brings it back. So maybe this could have even been closer to 250 if that holding call isn't flagged. I mean, it's one of the games. I mean, it's the best game of your career statistically. It's really just, like you said, a testament to the team. So as we go down the stretch here in the fourth, it's 24-23. You guys get the ball back. And you mentioned Jerome. This was not maybe – I mean, he had a good game. I think it was just a little bit less than 100 yards. Maybe it was 89 yards on the ground for Jerome, not the 178 he had the year before against USC. But he was huge on this drive to get you guys back up 31-23. Some big punishing runs, including an 8-yard touchdown.
Close to the 10. Bettis, first down. Bettis is the tailback. Bettis scored.
But the big play, Tony, in this drive, Reggie didn't score the touchdown, but it was a 42-yard run down the sideline. Jerome did all the other work, but Reggie got the big hit. Reggie got the bases loaded triple that set that whole thing.
Outside again. Number 65 for Notre Dame, Lindsey Neff, through the all-time All-American block.
And that was the thing about I always felt Jerome and I complimented each other well. And I still say this again. Had he not had that ankle injury that kept him out of game and limited the next game, we would have had 2,000-yard rushers in a season, period. I have no doubt about that to this day because we never looked at each other as, an adversary. It was always, we competed with each other as opposed to against each other. And, if you slip up, Jerome will hit you quick right up the gut. But he also had the ability to come back and drop back and play, tailback too, which he started in the NFL as a tailback. But the majority of his success was inside runs where he had 5 yards. And again, we ran downhill. So we're on you, hit you quick, but he had such good feet to be able to run and run between the tackles and get his feet up and run through the traffic. And that was one thing, like I said, always stuck. And like I said, he drops back another to 7 yards deep. Man, he can actually see before he has to hit something.
So we're moving our way through the fourth quarter here. You guys are up 8, 31-23, and you guys got the ball. And I think, if you're a Notre Dame fan at this point, I'm thinking we're going to give the ball to Reggie and Jerome and run this clock out. And I was kind of shocked that they were able to stop you.
3rd down and 4. Didn't get it.
Jerome was stopped short. You guys had to punt, and USC got it back with about 2 minutes on the clock. So now you're on the sidelines. And it was a pretty wild finish to this game, really.
Yeah.
I think it was – and USC I didn't think was managing the clock terribly well. Like they were taking their time, getting across midfield. They burned
Took a long time
out.
to take that second to last time out. They let way too much, thank goodness, time go off the clock.
Yeah, and they complete an amazing catch. It was Travis Hanna who made a remarkable catch, about a 45-yard completion that he grabs at the 5-yard line to give them 1st and goal with about 25 seconds left.
Coming up on 30 seconds. Let it fly for Travis Hanna. He caught it. You better take a timeout.
As you were watching USC kind of miraculously make their way down the field, what was going through your head, kind of, I guess, helplessly on the sideline watching your defense?
I always felt confidence in our defense. Again, they'd give up a big play. And that was kind of our, it wasn't a model that Coach Holtz liked, but we were a bend, don't break defense. I mean, you're going to get some big plays. You're going to, get some opportunities because, again, it's not like USC was, chopped liver. They were a pretty darn good team with a lot of talent and had one of the best receivers in the country and Curtis Conway. So they were not, a walkover. So we knew we were in a battle, but our defense always found a way to make plays in crunch time. And that goes back to the philosophy of don't flinch. That was, like I said, things are going to go bad, things are going to go well. So there are going to be ebbs and flows in a game. But at the end of the day, be confident in your fundamentals, be confident in your teammates. Trust your teammates to do what they're supposed to do. And that was kind of my feeling on the sideline. After the big play, I'm not going to lie. It was like, hold your breath. Because it's like, oh, my gosh, we don't give up this game. But at the same time, I knew the guys across the ball and what they were capable of. And there was always this confidence that, somebody's going to make a play. Don't know who it is, but somebody on the team at the right time is going to make the play that needs to be made. And we got a few guys that did that.
Yeah, we talked a lot about the offense because we're talking to you, Reggie, but the defense put this one away. I think the biggest play, there was the interception by Tom Carter at the end, but I thought the sack from Devon McDonald took them out of it, had to use the timeout.
1st and goal. Blitz. Got it. Timeout.
One thing in that situation you cannot allow to happen, and that is taking a sack.
Devon McDonald. Wide people. Into the corner, double coverage. Intercepted. There's a penalty flag back outside the 20. Let's see about the flag. Holding Trojan. Intercepted in the end zone by Notre Dame. Number 13. Carter gets up with a football.
6 sacks against that team. Because, it wasn't a great USC team, but it wasn't a bad team. And you talked about the importance. One thing we haven't touched on, for LA fans, and their fan base may not be as big, but it's just as demanding. they had lost to Notre Dame 9 times in a row. This was bad. And they had their own version of the green jersey in that game. They went back to the jerseys that had the piping on the shoulders, the stripes on the shoulders, that they last wore during, ironically, the first Notre Dame USC game that I had covered in 1982, which we call the Phantom Fumble game, when the Pac-10 officials gave USC a touchdown on a ball that was fumbled on the 2. It's the last time USC had beaten Notre Dame. So they ordered the shirts so late on a Wednesday before the game, and they showed up 3 hours before the game. So for USC, not surprising they fought back, because the thought of losing to Notre Dame, the thought of knowing that every time they ran into Reggie Brooks, he was going to remind them over and over he never lost to them, and they beaten them 10 straight. It ended up being, I think it was 13 straight games without a loss. And
I think it was the 95 game was 13
wins.
when we talked to Ron, yeah.
So it was special for them, absolutely special and intense. So you had to come up big, and 6 sacks all in the second half. That was typical, Reggie. You're right. That was the way Notre Dame, bend but don't break, but offense and defense also during the Lou Holtz era they would wear you down. Offense, obviously, with the running game, but defense would hurt you. They would just keep hitting you and hitting you, whereas those over-the-middle slant patterns that were complete in the first half, not completed so often in the second half, because the receivers knew that they were going to touch leather, and then they were going to get helmet in their gut.
You're going to get hit. I mean, you look at the guys that, were on that defense, Bryant Young, Junior Bryant, Brian Hamilton, Jim Flanagan, Devon McDonald, Demetrius DuBose, Tom Carter, Jeff Burris, John Covington. We had, we had a lot of guys that went to the NFL on offense. We had just an equal number of guys that made it to the NFL on defense. And, and those are the guys, again, that showed up. Carmel McGill, they stepped up, Pete Bursich. When the time comes, you got to be able to count on your teammates and trust that they're going to get the job done. And, I never felt helpless. I just felt like, hey, somebody's got to step up.
Yeah.
We was over there cheering them on, and I was also still sick as a dog. So I, I was still in recovery mode too. So I was just like, hey, I can't deal with another tie. So, and I don't want to come back out here again. So just finish this off so I can go lay down.
Take care of this,
you
please.
should have been sicker more often. Tony's worked with me enough to know that I'll always have numbers.
I don't want to
here's some numbers. Here's some numbers on this game and your season. If that 27-yard run that Tony mentioned hadn't been called back, you would have broken George Gipp's season per carry average of 8.2. But you broke a number of other stuff. Tony mentioned the 227 yards, still 5th highest in Notre Dame history. The 4th highest total was your 1,343 yards in a season. And that doesn't count the 115 in the Cotton Bowl. And this is one of the big problems with NCAA stats. They can't find anybody and aren't willing to pay for anybody to go back. They didn't count bowl games till 2002. So it's very hard to match apples and oranges. You do hold the record to this day for most yards per carry in a career of 7.6. And that's almost a full yard ahead of Don Miller, 6.8. Miller, one of the 4 horsemen, 22 to 24, is in the College Football Hall of Fame. So you waited your turn. You ended up having a pretty darn good career.
It wasn't bad. Again, it was more so. I also had developed friendships and relationships that I'll have for life, and just being to have an opportunity to be back and work at your alma mater and a place such a place as special as Notre Dame, definitely a blessing. And I'm grateful and grateful for the opportunity to kind of hang out with my good friend Jack. It's definitely gonna miss you, my friend.
I'm going to miss you a lot. I'm going to have to go down to Fort Worth. They got good steak down there, I hear.
Come on down. We got a good barbecue, too.
We're not done yet, though. There is a question that I have never asked you.
Here we go.
Really?
I find that hard to believe, Reggie.
And one of your accomplishments, I've never asked you about it, but in 1995 and 1996, you won the Madden Bowl championship. Please explain that to everyone, what the Madden Bowl title is and how you won it.
So that was a video game, and I coming out in college, played a lot of video games. I was more proficient, at least in my mind, at the NHL hockey game. So we would have tournaments, and this is when the joystick was less cumbersome and less involved. You don't have like multiple buttons and joysticks back then. So I played Madden, pretty decent. Those late nights in the dorm, having a beverage or two. You got little tournaments going, and I got pretty good and was beating quite a few guys. So, they had this tournament at the Super Bowl every year where they have a Madden Bowl tournament where celebrities and players would come and play Madden at the Super Bowl. And I was unfortunately never got to play in a Super Bowl, our playoff game, but that's a whole nother story. So I got the opportunity to come and play and wind up winning it 2 years in a row. And then in 97, my wife, she was always on me about, playing video games, while I, even during that time. So she hated it. So the year I did not participate in the Madden Bowl championship, guess what the two I won, they gave you 2 trophies. But the prize for winning the following year, a trip for 2 to Paris.
Oh no!
I still will not let her live that down. Say, because you didn't let me play. See what happened?
Get to go to Paris.
Exactly.
There you go. Oh, well, that's a great story. Reggie, I really appreciate you doing this. It was really fun to talk to Ron a couple weeks ago. It's been just as fun talking to you about this game. I think as somebody that works at Notre Dame, that again, knew you were an excellent football player. I'd seen obviously the 2 highlights we talked at the beginning, the Michigan run and the Penn State catch. But to watch a game start to finish, I think if anybody can track down games from that 92 season that we do have the rights to, like Jack said, and just watch you run. And like you said, that whole offensive line block, I mean, it was a blast to just watch what you did 28 years ago. As Jack said, we're fired up for you to go take on this new opportunity with the Holtz Foundation. But it's been a blast being just your coworker and being a colleague. I know Jack can echo that sentiment, and I'll let him speak to it. But what you've done for Notre Dame in this department, I think, is a great testament to what athletes can do when they move on from sports at a place like Notre Dame.
Well, they like to talk about Notre Dame man, and we're looking at one in the bottom of the screen right now. And those listening, you've listened to one throughout the half hour, and I'm not going to get maudlin, but it's kind of like a small part of me is going to be going down to Texas. So it's been a great friend. He's a great human being. We will talk again. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for continuing the legacy of Notre Dame players, and maybe for another podcast, what he has done for athlete relations with the athletic department, starting originally with football that needed some work, and then with all athletes has just been tremendous. They talk about the Notre Dame family, and the family wasn't as close, the older members, as maybe they should have been when he moved into that position. And now they're as tight-knit a family as they possibly could be. And a lot of the credit goes to Reggie. And at Notre Dame, that is probably more important. It's important everywhere, but nowhere is that more important than at Notre Dame. And they're going to miss him for that. But in his role with the Holtz Foundation now, he's going to be able to make sure that that whole football family stays close. And I'm sure we may see him at another game or two. And you won't be running around this time. You'll be on the sidelines.
You'll be relaxed.
Maybe enjoy a game for once, huh?
Running people down, I won't have to tell you before a post-game show what that play looked like because you were putting out a fire back in the Joyce Center or something.
I think there's a good spot for him on the 7th or 9th floor they can find for Reggie to watch a couple games at. Yeah.
They better.
Awesome.
Reggie, thank you.
Reggie, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Brooks. Notre Dame, Bob Johnson from Southern California, 31-23. Fighting Irish, 9-1-1. We hope you enjoy it.
You have been listening to an official Notre Dame Athletics podcast presented by Fighting Irish Media.